I'd like to thank the Chair of the Petitions Committee for bringing forward this debate today on an important issue facing my region. I live in Port Talbot, and I must say at the outset, I am not, in principle, opposed to the establishment of a new prison in Port Talbot, in principle. Despite the protestations of many opposed to the new prison, Wales definitely needs a new prison. But the location has to be correct, and if there is any aspect which renders it incorrect, in Baglan, unsuitable, such as the flooding aspect, which Nigel, who's Plaid Cymru councillor, spoke to me about not so very long ago, then obviously that site is unsuitable. Just 2 weeks ago, mental health charity Havel warned that overcrowding at HMP Swansea was affecting the safety and mental health of prisoners. And when the Victorian prison was built, it was designed to hold around 240 prisoners. It currently holds twice that number. Swansea is the third most overcrowded prison in the UK. And with the exception of the new prison in North Wales, all of our prisons are overcrowded. Cardiff is operating at 150% capacity, as is Usk. Park is operating just over capacity. Having worked for many years at HMP Park, I can tell you that overcrowding is hard both on prisoners and staff alike. Prisoners in modern prisons are not simply shut away in the dark and forgotten about. They are rehabilitated. And if anyone wants to speak to me on my 8 years of experience, I would only be too happy to tell them. In recent years, as a result of overcrowding, self-harm amongst prisoners has skyrocketed, as has sickness and absence amongst most prison officers. There has also been a rise in assaults on prison staff. In the last 10 years, the number of self-harm incidents have nearly doubled to around 38,000 a year. And over the same period, assaults on staff have increased by over 32%. Last year, there were around 6,500 assaults on staff, 761 of which resulted in the prison officer being hospitalised. Yes.
I thank the member for taking the intervention, and I listen to what she's saying, and I accept fully that when prisons are overcrowded and we need to ensure that's the case. But do you agree with me, therefore, that the £1.3 billion that the Ministry of Justice has put aside for 4 new super prisons would actually be better spent on improving the justice system to ensure that the people who need to be in prison are in prison, not all those who don't need to be there, and therefore get the system right, because the system's failing.
So
the system's in chaos.
Are you trivialising crime and not thinking of the victim then, David? Because what you're saying is crime is trivial. Some crimes are trivial. They're not when there's a victim involved.
I didn't say that, and you know it.
Well, you have just said it. We have to tackle overcrowding, and unfortunately this means building more prisons. Wales currently has 5 prisons, yet a large number of Welsh prisoners are housed in prisons in England. Some opponents of the prison claim that Wales is becoming the new Botany Bay, becoming a dumping ground for English prisoners, and this is rubbish. There are nearly 2,000 Welsh prisoners held in English jails, yet 700 English prisoners are held in Welsh prisons. We have no women's prison in Wales and not a single Category A prison. There is a clear need for a new prison. Wales has 4,747 prisoners, yet the 5 prisons in Wales have an operational capacity for 3,700 prisoners. We have to build a prison, but we have to ensure it is in the right location. I believe my region will benefit from the new prison. Port Talbot recently topped the chart for having the worst social mobility in Wales and one of the worst in the UK for poverty. The local community desperately needs inward investment, and the prison will bring much-needed employment opportunities. And I resent the fact that these employment opportunities have been trivialised and called non-jobs, effectively, not just in the construction phase, but also during its operation. And despite this, some politicians have been mobilising opposition to the plans and playing on people's fears. The argument based on community safety just doesn't stack up. The prison will be a low-category prison, not housing dangerous, hardened criminals and murderers. It will house Category C prisoners. In contrast, we have prisons in the city centres in Swansea and Cardiff that house higher Category B prisoners, and there has been no public safety incidents at either of these prisons, and nor have there been any at HMP Park on the outskirts of Bridgend. HMP Park, Swansea and Cardiff have also not been a drain on local resources. And the petitioners claim that over 8,000 signatures show the majority of the town are against the prison. Port Talbot is home to over 37,000 people. If every one of these signatures were from that town, that would be less than a quarter of the population. And these signatures are not all from that town, are they? If the majority of residents were opposed to this prison, and I couldn't convince them of the benefits it could bring, then, as their representative, I would oppose the prison being built in Port Talbot. But as it stands, the majority of people have not shared their views, and I therefore believe that this should be decided by the Planning Department. And as we are in the early stages of this proposal and process, I cannot support the petitioners at this time.